Hi guys, this is Max Waldorf. I'm going to make a short here slideshow on how to play and install Explain 10 sceneries. I know there's been a couple videos on that already, but I wanted to make something really clear here based on the slideshow to show you exactly what you need to do and tips, tricks, how to, basically, tutorial. Here we go. So, where are they located? Well, two places basically. The default place, which is the custom scenery, and other places. When I say other places, is you can use other folders within the same hard drive or use another hard drive to place the sceneries, mostly because you have, for, let's say, an SSD and you don't want to load up your SSD with sceneries that you don't always use and you want them to be loaded on another hard drive where you store all your sceneries, for example. This is the case for me. I have a separate hard drive that where I put the sceneries that I don't use often. So I place them on the second hard drive. Yeah, I have mechanical hard drive. So yeah, for other places, simple enough. In the custom scenery, just place a shortcut in the folder, and at next explain startup, it will load. It will see it, recognize the shortcut, and load the scenery. How to install? Some come with automatic installation, so this one probably not need really to care about this. Manual installation. This one usually asks for airplanes. This is not really difficult. What you really need to do is drag and drop the folder in the default folder that we've seen before to the custom scenery. Or put, as I said, if you have a separate hard drive where you store sceneries and you don't want to load up, then you have an SSD and you don't want to load up your SSD with sceneries. In this case, you just need to put the shortcut in the default scenery, in the custom scenery folder from Explain. Content. The main ones you will see are this one, and you may see also this kind of folder. So what happened is that you have EarthNav data, in which you will have another folder, latitude, longitude folder, and inside you will have DCF files, which will be usually named like that, .dsf. In the EarthNav data also you will find the airport. Usually you will have the APT, which is the airport. If it's an airport scenery, you will find the APT. Also file if it's a custom layout for the runways, taxiways, parking, etc. I haven't mentioned it here, but you will also find this kind of file there. Then depending on the authors, they will choose to place the object inside the object folder. So they're probably going to use, somehow we will be using, for example, subfolders inside this object main directory. You will have inside the 3D object will end with obj, and usually what happens is that they use also in the same folder, they can also export the PNG files, and those PNG files, usually if you have only blah blah blah.png, it will be a texture for day conditions, and you will also find the same kind of naming, underscore lit, and if you have the underscore lit, it just means that this is the night texture for the same object. Then you could find other directories, other files that are under the main folder that you will extract in the custom scenery. But that depends on the type of that just depends on the type of folder that you're extracting. If it's an airport, if it's for example a mesh a 3D object like Open Scenery X or whatever. So yeah, the scenery types. I've divided those into 5 categories: level 0, 1 through 3, 4. Level 0 is what I call the mesh, land class, photo sceneries. Um, Basically, here you have the pictures. Here, as you can see, this is the example that you can find. The source is developer.explain.com. It shows here, for example, how it explains sees the terrain. So the meshing of the terrain, for example, here, uh, everything is divided into triangles, for example, as you can see there. The image might be a bit small, but yeah, just going to redraw those ones, for example, to give you a right example of how yeah, how it's drawn here. So, and you have the final output here that shows exactly what's happening. So here, for example, there is a river, and you see the detail of the mesh here. So you will find those small triangles here, and every triangle actually will just show when it comes to, for example, the mesh HGV3, it will. So for each of those points, you will get coordinates in space. So you will get also with, when I mean space, it was also going to get the height of the point. And for the triangle, it will set up a zone of also the land class. So here, for example, if it's this desert, it will show up desert land class. So X-plane will know that it needs um, for example, for all those three triangles, it will be set as desert, and so it will basically understand that it's desert and draw the desert texture, the one default from X-plane. For example, if we take a small triangle here, well, it's difficult to draw because this is really small. Here, for example, it will see that it is water, and basically it just will draw water here. So, for example, rocks or whatever. All those triangles will get the points at the edge of the triangle will get the coordinates, and with inside the triangle will be defined the land class. Same thing. What I consider also, so we've covered those two. And the photo scenery, what happens is that it's a kind of overlay that will be put on top of the mesh. But the problem is that you cannot have, and this is what I want to say, is that you cannot have the photo scenery and the mesh at the same time. I mean, if you have, for example, the Mage HGV3 and a photo scenery in a region, in a given region, you can't use the photo scenery tile on top of the mesh. The photo scenery tile will be applied on top of the default mesh from X-Plane. So be careful with that. The photo scenery, if you want really to have the Mesh V3 HD and the photo scenery tile, you need to have a bit of work by putting together the photo scenery and the mesh in the same DSF file that will define as well as the mesh as well as the photo scenery PNG or texture that it needs to use for the photo scenery tile. So be careful with that. Don't use the photo scenery and the mesh HGV3 thinking that you will have both active at the same time. This is not the case. Whatever you do, you need to have a combination of photo scenery and mesh if you want to have it working. It used to be the case for SimHeaven. They were giving that the photo scenery tiles and the mesh combined together. Other than that, you'll need to do it by yourself. There are tools. Check out developer.explain.com, and you will see that there are tools to make it possible. But it needs some research. I'm not an expert, so I won't get into details for that. Then you've got level 1, what I consider as the object libraries. So it will just the object libraries for example, the OpenScenery X or other object libraries that will be needed for custom sceneries that are built by some authors, and they will usually tell you, well, we need that library and this one. So you need to install them and declare them in the global file scenery, the scenery file that you have and explain. We'll see that in the next slide. Level 2 is what I consider autogen networks. So autogen and networks. I have a picture here, same site, developer.xplain.com, which shows you basically the road networks, as well as you see also the water here. And then this mainly here you have the road networks, the train networks, for example, power lines, and then the building. If you can also have definitions of buildings here in areas, saying that this will be residential, this will be industrial, and it would place up the autogen and in those well area here. So this is what I call the level 2. It could be also custom object that we would place in this area, but probably if it's only custom objects and not OSM, for example, a folder that you'll need to extract. That concerns here. The level 2 is basically OSM, sceneries, and well, I don't remember all the names. But yeah, basically it will be all the sceneries that will be extracted from OSM. So there are several tools that can give you those extracts actually. The level 3 will be the default airports, the landscapes, but the specific landscape. When I mean landscape, for example, in cities, it's just that, for example, if you have Manhattan, Miami City, those ones, for example, will be to be loaded on top of the level 2 because those are custom objects and specific zones that are defined within the folder. And if you want to have the perfect combination with explain, you need to have it at what I call the level 3, because if you put it before them, might get into conflict with the level 2 actually. And level 4 is everything that concern airport sceneries and really only airports. So yeah, airports quite pretty easy. Yeah, it's like imagine it's a cake, and this will be the base of the cake, and it will have all those layers on top of the base of the cake. So what in 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 the end, it will go. The bottom of the file will be here, and the more you progress on top of the file, it will go up to the layer 4. So base, top. Here we go. And everything that we've seen before, everything is gathered within a file, which is the scenery underscore pack.ini. It's based in the custom sceneries, so always the same folder. Its function is pretty simple actually. It defines what scenery to load, the order in which they are loaded. So everything that is at bottom of the file will be loaded first, and everything that is on top will be loaded last. So everything that is at the bottom basically will be the level 0 that we explained before, and everything that will be at the top of the file will be the level 4 that we've seen. So airport sceneries, for example. So imagine that all the files is accumulating all the layers on top of each other. So always be careful and which line is at which level, because you might have some screw ups and sceneries might not load correctly. And also you have functions to exclude specific sceneries. If, for example, you are a designer or you want to design with the word editor tool, an airport or zone, and you want to work on that, and you don't want it to override any existing scenery when you're flying, because the work is not totally complete. In this case, pretty easy. Everything that will be loaded up, so will be added here. So I put a plus sign, so scenery pack, and everything that you want to remove, so I put here minus, is scenery pack underscore disabled. It prevents you actually, so this is the important part here, it prevents you actually to um, having to delete each time or to put it away, the folder where the folder that you want to you don't want explain to load. Might be essential if some areas, for example, you're not flying there often and you still want to have the scenery available when you're going within this specific area, and it will be easy to put disable before and and just remove it whenever you need it. So that's probably the one of the tips that you need to remember about this. All right. Yeah. So now, for example, the tips, yeah, for the custom sceneries. If you have an SSD on which on which you have explain, always, and this is really important, save space on SSD. You won't have to load. You won't need all the sceneries if you have a separate hard drive. SSDs are, well, getting cheaper, but are still expensive. So always remember that you have the ability to put sceneries that you don't use often away from this SSD, and you just need to put it in the folder shortcut, which is really easy to use. So do that. It's the best way to save space and resources on your SSD. Disable or delete the sceneries that you don't use. You don't want Explain to load up a ton of sceneries that will load up the memory, and Explain will not know what exactly to do with it. Respect the scenery types and load them in the correct order. Always respect the different layers of sceneries I've explained before, and this is really important when you come to having a terrain experience. Always remember about this. Avoid region overlap. This one is important because if you're not using the same source and you have, for example, Paris area, and you have two files that define, for example, Paris area and all the buildings, etc., there will be some overlaps, and the end result might not be as good as the one you were expecting. So always be careful with that. Edit the scenery pack in.ini when explain is off. Obviously, what happens is that explain is reading the file when it loads up, so it will release the file, so you still can edit it while explain is open, but it will rewrite the file when it exits. So always be careful to edit the file when explain is turned off. One thing you may need to know is that if the scenery pack ini file is not available, or you are adding multiple files, explain will use the alphabetical order to add up the sceneries. So if you're adding multiple sceneries at once, always use, if you might need to have them sorted into alphabetical order, so explain will understand he needs to add those files into, well, those directories in a specific order. So remember that that might be a tip that you want to also to remember. Deleting a folder or a shortcut in the custom scenery folder from explain will also remove the scenery line from the scenery underscore pack.ini. Remember that, because if you don't want to remove the folder or the shortcut but still don't want it to be loaded by explain, remember the disabled mentioned, I've said earlier in previous slide, it might be essential when it comes not to delete or move away the folder and just explain, understand that it doesn't need to load up the scenery, but you still want it to be in the same location. So remember that you can use a disabled code after the scenery load. Might be important if you're playing a lot with sceneries. Here we are. Hope you enjoyed and this short tutorial about the sceneries for X-Plane. And obviously, don't hesitate to post comments if you have other questions. I might not get into too much technical stuff in the comments, but if I know how to answer it, I will. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.